Hello, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you today as we explore an important topic. Because here's the truth: we need to stop telling single people to get married. Today's presentation is called the Solo Movement, Celebrating Single Life. We'll be discussing how society's ideas about adulthood have been changing, why the traditional narrative no longer fits, and how we can embrace and celebrate single life in new ways. So let's get started. This is really the essence of the solo movement. His reasoning was quite simple. Why should married people have all the fun? What he didn't realize that night was that he was actually joining something much bigger, a growing movement. It's a movement that celebrates being single, not as something to fix or fixate on, but as a way of life to embrace. It's not about being better than marriage, nor worse. It's just different. Now, fast forward 20 years, and you have a story about a young professor at CU Boulder who threw himself a bachelor party. And it was a typical celebration. Laughter, glasses clinking, stories shared, everything you'd expect. But here's the twist: he wasn't getting married. This was a party without a wedding, and it marked the beginning of a movement that challenges traditional ideas about singleness and celebrates it as a valid, fulfilling life choice. And if you think society is being subtle about pushing marriage, think again. It's not subtle at all. In fact, there's even a book called Get Married that was launched, of course, on Valentine's Day. When we look at the societal pressures, it's clear that married people enjoy over 1,000 legal and financial benefits, from tax advantages to social security perks. Meanwhile, singles are left to carry their own load, buying their own appliances, and constantly fielding questions from relatives like Aunt Sally about whether they've met someone yet. Despite these benefits for couples, our world is still largely designed around the idea of being in a partnership. Now, looking at societal imbalance, in 1960, about 90% of American adults eventually married. Today, that number has dropped significantly. Only about half of all adults in the U.S. are married. And the trend among millennials is even more striking, with projections indicating that 25% may never marry at all. Gen Z is moving even faster in that direction. So what does all this tell us? The numbers don't lie. We're witnessing a real shift in the modern world's demographics. The way society views marriage and single life is changing rapidly, and it's important we recognize these evolving patterns as part of our broader conversation about relationship norms and societal expectations. But here's the real question. If marriage truly caused happiness, then why are the happiest places on Earth, especially in Scandinavia, filled with people living solo? It's a bit counterintuitive, right? And if we look at the costs involved in marriage in the U.S., the average wedding costs around $30,000. That's a pretty expensive mood swing, if you think about it. Now, research consistently shows that people who get married are usually already a bit happier beforehand. The only noticeable happiness boost happens on the wedding day itself, but that's short-lived. The happiness quickly fades. So, the science seems to tell a different story than the common belief. Some marriage advocates even suggest, get married, become happy, save civilization while you're at it. But if we look at the data, it's clear that the story isn't so simple. They often point to studies showing married people report higher life satisfaction. But the truth is, this is a bit misleading. It's what I like to call the misleading marriage happiness myth. The correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, and the overall picture is much more nuanced. Let's look at how urbanization, apartments, and modern home appliances have transformed our way of living. These developments have made it much easier for people to live independently. Think about cities like Stockholm. What they exemplify is a society designed for individuals, not just for couples or traditional family units. This shift shows us that independent living is becoming more normalized and accessible. It's a clear indication of how societal structures are evolving to support personal choice and autonomy. And here's something society rarely acknowledges. Singles give more time, more care, more support. They are often the ones caring for elderly parents and disabled friends more than married individuals. It's a common misconception that singles are lonely or isolated, but in reality, many are deeply connected and engaged in their communities. Now, when we look at the American solo population, about half fall into what's called the third category. These are individuals who aren't out searching for love or lust. Their lives are already full of purpose, passion, and connection. We can categorize them into three groups. First, the single by priority, those who aren't looking at all because they're focused on careers, education, creativity, or making a contribution to the world. They're living intentionally and purposefully. Next, we have the just may singles. These are open to love if it happens to come their way, but it's not their main focus right now. They're content with where they are. And then there are the someday singles, those actively searching for their person, holding on to hope and patience, believing that love is still on the horizon. Interestingly, when I visited Sweden, I didn't find lonely hermits or isolated individuals. Instead, I encountered vibrant, interconnected singles, some by choice, some by chance, living lives rich in community and connection. What this tells us is that the real lives of single adults are often full, meaningful, and rooted in relationships and purpose. They're not alone or lonely. They're engaged, connected, and living remarkable lives. This slide emphasizes that choosing a single life isn't a consolation prize or a sign that something is wrong. It's simply a different, yet equally valid path of adulthood. When we talk about elevating single living, we mean removing societal expectations that you need a spouse or marriage to be complete. No permission from marriage is required. It's about creating a life that's fulfilling on your own terms. Look at how Sweden leads the way with policies that support this idea. Access to elder care, affordable child care, low-cost education, and universal health care. These are concrete examples of how society can support individuals regardless of their relationship status. We should support family of one policies, helping people thrive without necessarily being part of a traditional family structure. Having a significant other doesn't mean you need a spouse. What you truly need is meaningful human connection, whether that's family, chosen family, or close friendships. Research shows that life satisfaction isn't dictated by marital status, but by the richness of your social bonds. So, it's important to expand our definition of a significant other who can fulfill that role in your life. And finally, instead of telling single people they're missing out, we should be telling them what they're gaining: independence, personal growth, and deep connections that are just as valuable as traditional relationships. And many singles are, too, wholehearted, financially stable, emotionally healthy, deeply connected, doing meaningful work, living a life filled with friends who feel like family. He isn't half of anything, he's whole. But eventually, he realized something powerful. For years, I believed that something must be wrong with me for not wanting marriage. It felt like an ill-fitting suit, or worse, a straitjacket. What I've come to understand is that being wholehearted means not waiting for a partner to complete us. It's about embracing who we are fully, living a life where we're whole on our own. Because, ultimately, I believe that being complete doesn't depend on a relationship. We can be whole, even when we're single. And that's a really important message to carry forward. Cheers to a world where every path to a remarkable life is honored. So let's raise our glasses to choices, not prescriptions, to freedom, not pressure, and to both settling down and going solo, because all of these options are valid and welcome. Whether you're widowed, separated, divorced, or never married, these are all part of the diverse landscape of life. The solo movement, in particular, is a big tent. It's inclusive of many different experiences and perspectives. And despite all the nostalgia for the good old days, which, as we know, weren't necessarily that good, we're actually moving toward a future where single living and married life stand side by side as equals. There's no single script that defines what a meaningful life looks like. Instead, there are countless ways to live a remarkable life. And that's the core message here. It's about celebrating the diversity of life choices and recognizing that each one can be fulfilling and meaningful. Because at the end of the day, it's not about fitting into a predefined mold. It's about embracing the idea that remarkable lives come in many forms, and that's something to be celebrated.